This could be one of the coolest upgrades that I have seen to a table saw to date. So much so that it could replace some functions that a jointer does as well as a router table does, all on the table saw. What makes this special is it adds 5 brand new functions to your table saw in this little package. I'd like to thank Mike Taylor from TayTools.com for sending this over for me to check out. And if you'd like to check out any of the tools that I show today, I'll link those in the description, the pinned comment, and of course, the QR code. If you're watching on TV, you can scan with your phone. If you don't know, TayTools, small family-owned business right there in Missouri. It's well worth supporting. Now, let's go. A couple of years ago, I featured this on the channel. This is the bow extender fence system. And what this does is it really takes your table saw to another level, especially if you're using the smaller job site saws. But even if you use a cabinet saw or a bigger saw, these things are wildly functional and they just add so much more capability to your table saw. If you missed that video, let me tell you what the extender fence does before I talk about this new upgrade. The bow extender fence does just what it says, is extend your fence. So if you're using smaller job site saws, sometimes you need extra support. And this is where these really shine because they give you both in-feed and out-feed support, especially on smaller saws where they need it the most. What I've found on using these smaller table saws is when I'm making my cuts, a lot of times the piece falls off the back, which really sucks. I don't want that. First, you don't want it kicking up in your face. You also just don't want to damage the stock that you're cutting. So this does give you that outfeed support. And on the infeed side, it gives you that support leading up to the cut, especially again when you're cutting those longer pieces. So this is one of the greatest upgrades for that reason. This also allows you to put vertical pressure down on the stock that you're cutting using vertical feather boards. And before this come along, you'd have to build jigs and all kinds of stuff to get those vertical feather boards to hold that pressure down. This helps you get more accurate and cleaner cuts, especially when you pair it with a feather board pushing toward the blade, because now this gives you 2 different points of pressure pushing against the fence and pushing down toward the table, which is exactly what you want for the safest and cleanest cuts possible. These also help prevent kickback because of the way these feathers are made. It basically only pushes one way. And if it tries to go back the other way, it binds it up and prevents that kickback. These are just a couple of the things that this extender fence can do for any table saw, but most especially for the smaller ones. Now when you get the L fence, you do have to take a little bit of that brown paper off of the acrylic, which is standard for any acrylic stuff. We can put a man on the moon, we can communicate across the world with the internet, but we can't figure out how to make this easier to come off. Acrylic, it's not bow, it's just everybody, every acrylic. It's maddening. Anyway, all you gotta do is take that off, it takes a few minutes, and then you can set this up. It comes with 2 L brackets, 3 knobs, and some screws to attach this. Dead simple. Within a couple of minutes, you're gonna be up and running. Now to attach it to the fence, it slides right into the T-tracks on the fence. These accessories I knew were coming. On the original video, I said, man, there's too much going on here not for them not to start adding more accessories. And they finally are, and I'm glad to see it. Now, once you get this installed, you can put this on any table saw fence that you may have. This just sits right down beside your table saw fence. Then you take 2 of the bow clamps and just attach it to the fence. Very simple. Now you're ready to start cutting whatever you're going to cut with it. But first we need to set it up properly. Now because of the way they designed this L fence, it will raise up and down so you can position it wherever you need it. And that's very important because you do need to position this low enough that your template will make contact with it, but not too low so the blade won't make contact with it. So all you do is lower this until the template is riding on there securely. I like to have at least half or more of my template on there, usually a little bit more, and then you just ensure that the blade is just going to cut the material that you're wanting to cut, which is whatever is under the template. All I need to do now is align the fence, move it over, and line up the edge of this L fence to the edge of my table saw blade, just to ensure that everything's nice and perfect. You can use a square, you can use they actually recommend using a ruler, but I find the square is a little bit easier as long as everything's squared up, and then you're ready to go. Traditionally, if I needed to replicate this piece, I need to make this angle piece over and over again, I would typically have to have a router table, which can be a pricey upgrade for a shop, and the router and all that to go with it. Or if I was doing it on the table saw, I would have to just continually set things up over and over. But now, with this, we can replicate these pieces very easy. Over and over, we can make multiples of these. Template cutting, number 1. So if you're making the same thing over and over, you know how convenient it is to be able to produce those very fast, and that's what this is going to do. So all you do is take some double stick tape, tape it to the piece below, just like I've done here, and now all I got to do is cut. It's going to follow the pattern on top. It's so easy, as you can see, all the way down both long sides, and then I can even, which you wouldn't want to do this free-handed, but because we do have that L fence supporting us, slowly make those cross grain cuts on the top and the bottom. Now, We have just replicated this piece in about a minute or so. Now we can just do it again and again and again. However many pieces you need, that's where this is going to really shine for template cutting. Function number 2 is kind of similar, but before I got to this piece to replicate, I needed to taper it because it needed to have a 4-inch to a 2-inch taper for my project. I just marked 4 inches on one end, 2 inches on the other, take a piece of plywood and line it up, and now I can just use that as my tapering guide, and I can taper it and it come out dead accurate, 4 inches to 2 inches. That's function number 2. One of the coolest functions that a lot of people will get benefit out of this is rabbeting functions. If you need to rabbet out a groove, if you don't know what a rabbet is, it's just basically a groove down the outside edge of a board here. If I need to rabbet this out, if I'm making picture frames or whatever, I'm just insetting anything in there, then I can use the L fence for this. Typically, if you don't have an L fence, you have to set up a sacrificial fence on your table saw with the MDF or anything like that. This can take a place of that. All you're going to do, again, just use the L fence to help guide the edge of this board while you make the length of the cut. Now you have a rabbeted edge. You can do this on all 4 sides of the board if you needed it, or just down 2 sides, or however you need to do that. You can just use this over and over to produce as much product as you need, easily. Now if you're cutting tenons, one of the good things about this is it's clear so you can see through it, so you can clearly see your cut lines as you work your way up to them if you're using dado stacks or even single blades. And because this does offset from the actual fence, the L fence puts it out away from there, your pieces won't get jammed up between the blade and the fence, which is really nice. Now this can also take the place of an edge joiner, which is fantastic because joiners, a very budget joiner is $350 and up, usually $550 and up to get a decent one. And if you're wanting just to edge joint, in other words, you're just making panels, tabletops, cutting boards, that sort of thing, you just need to get the edges to where they're perfectly straight, this can do that. Using the exact same way we did our templates, except if you have a rough edge or a live edge, we can square those up. Now all you have to do is take a template, something straight and square. I'm using a piece of plywood here. I know this is dead accurate, dead straight. So I'm going to tape this onto this live edge piece. Then I'll just set up my L fence and make the cut. That edge is perfectly straight with the reference template. Again, just a piece of plywood works just fine. Then you just take that template off, take the L fence off, which is very easy to remove, move the fence over and make another cut on the opposite side of that board. Now you have 2 parallel edges, both perfectly straight, so long as your table saw was set up square, which you should make sure that your table saw blade is 90 degrees before making this cut. If so, you've got 2 perfectly square edges. Now you can just repeat this over and over until you get your cutting board or your tabletop or whatever you're making. So, no joiner, no problem here. Now I'm not sure if this is authorized or sanctioned by Bo, but I did it. I wanted to see if I could cut a radius on the end of this board following this template. This template is actually a dog tag template from Crafted Elements that you can buy there, but it's in the shape of a dog tag. Now a few years ago I made this mallet stand in the shape of a dog tag with the saying all gave some gave all. In honor of a Vietnam veteran we made the mallet for. And so this is a cool little template to use. So I wanted to see if I could replicate that radius on the end of this 3/4 inch, almost 1 inch, it's a little over 3/4 inch thick walnut. Now I was able to do it, but it wasn't 100% perfect the first time. I had to go over it multiple times to get it to follow that radius. But if you don't have a router table or a bandsaw, then this might be an option for you. Just make sure that that template is secure on there with double stick tape. But if you have a bandsaw, this gets easier. Because this L fence is specifically designed to work with both the bandsaw and the table saw. So you can put this on your bandsaw using the same extender fence, and you just flip this little piece around. This little radius guide here flips out, goes between the blade, and now you can cut radiuses, both outside and inside radiuses. So if you do have those style templates, you can absolutely do that on a bandsaw using this L fence, which makes it even more versatile. Oh, and if you wanted, you could also pattern cut just like you did on the table saw with your bandsaw, which is pretty cool. One of the things I was really surprised by was how safe this felt to use. Now, I'm a little skittish about certain things when I'm using my table saw. I don't want that blade to touch my hands. Most of us don't. Even when I was cutting across the grain on the longer side and even the shorter side, making that cross cut on this template, I never felt like I was out of control or it was binding up or anything. I was keeping good pressure against the template, moved slowly. Everything was, it just felt safe to do. Now you do want to make sure that you're using this safely with push blocks and keeping your hands away from the blade, preventing kickback, all the normal things you would do with a table saw. But this does add a ton of versatility to a table saw if you're in a market. Again, if you'd like to check out the bow extender fence or the L fence add-on, I'll link those in the description, the pinned comment, and of course, right there in that QR code if you're watching on TV. If you like this video, you got to check out the bow extender fence full review right there if you want to see all the functions it can do. Click in that box to get you the big old virtual fist bump.